for the people to join? Like the number is increasing or
Yes, people will be flowing in.
we'll just take 1 or 2 minutes more. Let people join in and we'll start. Hi everyone. Welcome. So I'll start. Welcome everyone. So this is our first masterclass for this hackathon, and really excited to see now the count has gone up to 700 plus registration. Who will be the teams and individuals who will be participating in this hackathon. So we thought of starting up with first masterclass basically focus on Sahamati Net infrastructure, which we have introduced to the developers, and Railu, who is who is the architect for this infrastructure, will brief you and take you through the nuances of Sahamati Net and also some nuances from the account aggregator side. The second half, so 6 to 7, we will be hearing Railu, and then we have a open session. So if you have any queries, and while onboarding also, if you have faced any queries, do let us know. Feel free to have a discussion in that session. Even if you need any clarity, any support, feel free to reach out to any of the admins of the groups. I hope you all have joined the WhatsApp group. Majorly, we have tried to split the groups into 4 types. One is if you are looking for teammates, you can choose join the find a team group. We have also kept a group for especially if you need any assistance into tech side. The third group is on ideation. If you want to create more, if you want to hear from the industry expert, what are the ideas, and if you want to brainstorm, these groups, please feel free to join these groups and actively engage and discuss your thoughts. I would be assisting you throughout the hackathon for the complete month. I'll share my number. I am there as an admin. If you find anything you want to discuss, please feel to reach out to me. So now I'll hand over to Railu to take this ahead, and Railu will brief you on Sahamati Net. And Railu, if you can just have a brief introduction, it will be great.
Sure. Thanks, Abhishek. Welcome everyone. And I think today is the first weekday after the start of the hackathon, I guess. So I hope all of you guys are already gunning to go. Yeah, brief introduction. I think Abhishek, as he already said, I am part of the Sahamati team, a part of the architect team, working on building the Sahamati Net infrastructure, which I will explain what it is and why we have built that. So let me share my screen. I think already Anshuman has posted. If there are any questions, please post in the Q&A tab and we will address all those questions towards the end of the presentation. I hope my screen is visible. Yeah. Okay, as I said, today, as Abhishek also mentioned, today is the first masterclass for Buildathon 2024. Today we'll be covering the Sahamati Net session. But before going into the Sahamati Net, we also want to briefly touch upon the account aggregator, what the specs of account aggregator and what are the typical flows in an account aggregator ecosystem. And then we go on to Sahamati Net, which talks about how Sahamati Net services help integrating with the account aggregator network. Okay. Towards the end, we'll also have a demo of the Sahamati Net services, how you can use it and leverage them. As we mentioned, there will be a slot for Q&A. Please post it, type in your questions into the Q&A tab, and we will discuss all of them in the Q&A section. This will be the first half of this today's session, and post 7 o'clock, it will be open session to discuss about anything related to the hackathon. If you have challenges you do with onboarding, or if you have any other tech questions, that will be discussed from 7 to 8 p.m. Okay, so let me quickly start then. So I guess all of you obviously know what about account aggregator, and that's the reason all of you are here. Just a quick recap. Account aggregator is basically mainly for consented data sharing in the financial space as of today. But so if you see this picture, there are three main players, entities which play a role, FIPs, which is a short form for financial information providers, EAS, account aggregators, and FIUs, which are the financial information users. But most important stakeholder is the customer or the user who has the control to give consent and share his or her data to any of the FIUs. Okay. The high level flow is basically, a customer can give the consent to any FIU to access the data, and account aggregators play the role of the consent managers. They hold the consent and they ensure that this consent is not misused, and play the role of enabling fair use of data and consent between the FIUs and FIPs. So if you see FIUs and FIPs, all the requests go via account aggregators for different workflows, which we will touch upon briefly. So this is how an account aggregator ecosystem looks like, and these are the main stakeholders: the customer, account aggregators, financial information providers, and financial information users. Of course, there are other stakeholders also involved, like the regulator itself is the regulator such as RBI, SEBI, IRDA. They do play an important role. In addition to them, there are a lot of technology service providers who create solutions helping FIUs, FIPs, and EAS to integrate with the account aggregator. And of course, the hackathon participants, these solutions become the technology. So they are the hackathon participants potentially can become the technology service providers for any of these entities. Okay. So as I mentioned, regulators also play an important role in this ecosystem. One of the key things which they do is publishing the rules, the specifications for account aggregator. So Rabbit is one such entity, I think is backed by RBI, published the API specifications for account aggregator. There is a website where all these are available. If you go to https://api.webit.org.in, you will see the account aggregator API specifications. It provides the APIs which an account aggregator AAS should implement, FIP should implement, and FIU should implement, as well as multiple other artifacts for which purposes these APIs can be used, what kind of data, what should be the structure of each data. When I say data, bank account data, or my insurance policy data, or my loan repayment data. These are the different types of data which are referred as FI, financial information. So FI types, all those are also defined by by Rabbit.
So just a minute, Rilo. So loan account data is not there. Only the asset data for a customer is there.
Okay,
And Rabbit is a body who has published this specification. It is it's a tech arm for RBI.
sure.
I have shared the link for everybody reference. You can see the different FI types. Rilo, if you can just direct towards FI types, wala, the first header, go above and sorry, on the website.
Yeah, I'll go to the website. That's okay.
Acha, okay.
I'm on the PPT, so that's a screenshot. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
So yeah.
So FI types, you will find all the FI types which are proposed and which are already live. So
Yeah.
there are around 16 FI types, 16 different information types which are available and live on account aggregator. There are around total 24 which are there, which can come in coming time. So you have to, from a hackathon perspective, you have to think. You can think out of box and just think over what all data sets can be a part of it, and how we can use financial data and alternate data or the other data sets which are available in the market for building a product. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Abhishek. Okay, let me get back to this. Yeah. So moving on, yeah, this website, if you visit there, you will get all the information. So we will briefly touch upon the key flows that are involved in this account aggregator specs which are covered. So these are the top 6 flows. The first one is account discovery and linking flow. What it basically means is, as a customer, I can I have the freedom to choose what accounts I want to make available on the account aggregator network in the account aggregator system. I may have 10 bank accounts or 20 different accounts, but I may choose to say that, okay, I will link only 4 of them to be discoverable and usable, accessible on the account aggregator network. So these account discovery and linking flow is basically allowing the customer to discover her accounts from different FIPs and link them to with an AA account. Once that linking is happened, now an FIUs, as a customer, again, I can give consent to one or more FIUs to access those linked data from those linked accounts. That is the consent flow. Yeah. Consent handle management flow is actually a subflow of consent flow. Once a consent is provided, any changes in the consent status, sending the notifications to different parties involved, or revoking the consent. So these are all part of the consent handle management flow. Then there is the FI data flow, which is the actual data uh, flowing from an FIP to FIU. FIU, once the consent is approved by the customer, an FIU can request for an data. Then the FIP prepares the data for whatever time period and other parameters which the FIU has provided, and of course within the parameters of the consent. And FIP returns the data back to the FIU in an encrypted format, which the FIU can then use for the purpose, whatever purpose, either for lending or personal finance management or the other purposes. Then there are a bunch of notifications also enabled in this ecosystem. As I said, right, when a consent is revoked or when a consent is approved or when the FI data request is processed by the FIP. So these are a bunch of notifications that are also enabled that flow. Then finally, monitoring flow. This today is very simple, just to see if the other party is alive and functioning or not. So there are APIs defined to enable monitoring also in the account aggregator. So as I mentioned, Webbit has published those API specs, right, to fulfill all these flows. So what it means in each of these flows, Webbit has defined, okay, for account discovery and linking flow, every FIP has to implement a certain set of APIs. Then those APIs can be used by an account EAA to implement the account discovery and linking flow. Similarly, for consent flow, there are certain other set of APIs which has to be implemented by EAA and some APIs by others. So which are, if I move on, if you see for each of these flows, what APIs have to be implemented by whom. So in this hackathon, if you are playing an EAA role, so basically, this will be the APIs which you need to enable to be part of the AA ecosystem. Or if you are playing an FIP role, these will be the APIs which the as an FIP, an entity has to implement to be part of the AA ecosystem. So if you see for account discovery and linking, from the Rabbit API specs, an FIP has to implement these 3 APIs, which will be called by the AA. When a user goes to an AA app and uh, wants to discover their accounts and link it. So these are the APIs which as an FIP has to implement, and AA will be calling those APIs. Similarly, these are the list of APIs for all the flows. I will go a little deeper into three of those important flows. As you see at the end, monitoring is a very simple, it's a simple heartbeat API to just check whether that particular AA or FIP is live or not, is working or not. Okay. So going a little, let's look at the account discovery and linking flow in a little detail to understand it better. So an account discovery and linking, how does it happen? A customer on the account aggregator app, uh, what he first, I mean, the first two steps are not part of the Rabbit API specs, but typically the AA can actually provide the list of FIPs available to the customer on the AA app. For example, there might be 100 odd banks in the country, but all of them might not be available on the AA ecosystem. So an AA can show to the customer which are the banks that are available in the AA ecosystem. Then the
So,
customer.
Railu, can I add to it? As you
Sure,
rightly
sure.
said, so guys, since this journey, what generally the documentation requirement is by the user of the data. Users in a space are anyone who are the regulated entity under any of the four financial service regulators. And these are RBI, SEBI, PFRDA, and IRDAI. So what happens is, for example, if you consider a loan journey, on the when the customer is onboarded by a lender, and he and initial details of the customer profiles are being taken by the lender, then at the time of document sharing, so which is one of the requirement wherein the lender underwrites the customer, understanding how much loan he can offer, he requires your financial data. And then because right now the coverage of the information providers is around 150 plus entities, but there are chances that there are some banks or some financial institutes who are not a part of account aggregator. So what lender does is on the front screen, before redirecting to a space, they generally ask customer which is the in case of bank statement sharing, he will ask which bank do you bank with. And if he selects the bank which is there on account aggregator, he is shown a account aggregator screen. He is redirected to account aggregator screen, asking him to create a handle and share the information, which Railu will further show you how the APIs work to get the information from the customer. This all happens on a real-time basis.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So as a customer, you can see the customer can see the list of FIPs available, select an FIP and enter his identity information. Identity information could be anything based on what the FIP uses to identify the customer. It could be the PAN number, it could be the Aadhaar number, or it could be some other identities. Once that identity is provided to the AA system, the AA then can use the accounts discovery API as defined by the Rabbit API spec, which has to be implemented by the FIPs to fetch the list of accounts linked to that identity in that FIP. So this FIP layer, of course, integrates with FIP backend systems. For example, in case of banking, this FIP layer should integrate with the core banking system to fetch the accounts for a given identity and return them the list of accounts to the AA system, which is then displayed to the customer on the AA app. The customer can choose which of those accounts he wants to link to this particular AA handle. Whether, say, I may have 4 accounts in a bank, but I may choose to link only 2 of them and enable consents only for those 2 of them. So again, customer has the choice to select those accounts. Once those accounts are selected, AA makes an accounts link API call to the FIP saying that, okay, this customer is requesting to link these accounts to the particular AA handle. Then FIPs are supposed to send a OTP to the registered mobile number or email of the customer, which the customer has to share that OTP with the AA, and then AA again has to make an accounts link verify API call by passing the OTP to the FIP. FIP on in the system validate whether this OTP is same as the OTP which it has sent to the user to the customer, and then confirms the linking verification. Then the account aggregator stores that, okay, for this user for this account aggregator handle, these are the list of accounts linked. Okay, so this is a typical journey of account discovery and linking flow, but yeah, as always, innovations are expected to improve this experience to the end user and the end customer. But in a nutshell, if you are planning to build a customer AA app experience, these are the kind of APIs you will need from an AA, and these are the kind of APIs which an FIP will be providing for you to finish this flow. Similarly, if you are an FIP, you need to implement these APIs for AAs to use your services. Okay, so that's how account discovery and linking flow works. Moving on to consent flow. Again, here again, multiple parties are involved. As I said, FIU, typically FIUs initiate the consent flow, as Abhishek mentioned, for a lending use case. If a customer goes to a particular FIU agency, like a lending agency, and wants to apply for a loan, FIU can then send a request to the customer's AA handle to get access to the particular set of data which is required for the loan processing. So that is basically a consent API from an FIU to AA. This consent API contains multiple parameters defining for what purpose is this consent being requested, what kind of data is being requested, for how much duration, and how many times does the FIU is going to use that data. All that information goes as a part of the consent API request. Then the AA system is supposed to send a notification to the customer that there is a consent request waiting for you. User customer can log into the AA app, authenticate whatever the authentication mechanisms that AA app has for the customer. For example, it could be as simple as face authentication or a PIN or voice based, whatever innovation can happen here. Once user authenticates, the customer can see the consent request, which involves all the details of the consent request, like who is requesting, for what purpose, for what duration, what kind of data, all this information. And if customer is okay to share that data, he accepts that request and says, okay, from these accounts, I am giving the consent to share the data. So once the customer provides the consent, AA validates the consent, saves the consent, and sends a notification back to the FIU saying that the consent is approved by the user, and now you can access the data. Similarly, since the consent involves data from FIPs, AA also has to send the consent details to the FIPs. Here, one of the important thing is the consent is represented in form of a digitally signed artifact. So it has multiple data and a digital signature generated by the AA, so that it is tamper proof and nobody can mess with it and all those things. Okay. So again, there's an API for consent fetch, for FIU to fetch the consent artifact details, and all those things. And this is a typical structure of a consent artifact. I mean, these are the other different parts of information which are involved in a consent file, the consent artifact, which is generated by an AA and shared with FIP and FIUs. So it says, okay, what are the details of the consent? When does the consent start, and when will it expire? Whether the consent mode is for view only, there are other modes, whether how many times the fetch type, is it a one time or recurring? Similarly, there are different consent types. This is the consent information part. Then there is the identifier part. Who is the data consumer and who is the data provider and who is the customer involved in this consent? What is the purpose of this consent? And what data is being accessed? Like, from, if it is for a bank account statement, okay, from which date range to date range, and for how much, on what frequency I can, the FIU can fetch the data, this kind of information. And finally, the consent digital signature, so that any of this data cannot be tampered with or modified by any other party once generated. Okay, so that's with the consent flow. Then finally, the FI data flow. Once the consent is shared with the FIU can send a API request to fetch the data, whatever is allowed as per the consent. So there's an encryption mechanism defined by Rabbit. It uses the Diffie-Hellman encryption. So the FIU has to generate that encryption key and share it to AA. The AA will forward the request to the FIP. FIP prepares the data, and once the data is available, FIP sends a notification back to AA saying that the data is ready, which the AA forwards it to the FIU. Then the FIU can fetch, make a request to fetch the particular financial information. Again via AA, AA forwards it to the FIP. Now FIP encrypts the data and sends it back. So this encryption is done using the key which is shared by the FIU at the first step, so that AA cannot read the data. That data, once encrypted using that key, can be decrypted only by the FIU after receiving it. Decrypt and use it for the purpose. So this is the typical FI financial information data flow, data fetch flow. Okay.
I think Railu, you should stop and we should ask anybody has any query here. Uh, we should let them know. Anshuman, can we also bring people who want to ask question?
Currently, they won't be able to come up on the stage. They can drop in the question in the Q&A box. Would be
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that will be better, Abhishek. That people put it in the Q&A box and then we can answer them. I'm trying to
Sure.
access the Q&A box, but okay.
Railu, token is regenerated every after 24 hours, right?
Yeah, I'll come to that token. So this
Somebody
is
asked that question, so I'm just bringing it up.
okay. Sure, I'll touch upon that token part when we are going to the IAM infrastructure. Yeah. So far I have touched about, we have discussed only about the APIs and what information is sent as in the request and what information comes back in the response. The token is a part of the header to authenticate who is sending the request, that we will briefly will discuss shortly. Here, this DHE key, the encryption key, is not a token. It is part of the request body to encrypt the data. Okay. Okay. I think in the beginning itself, we saw, I was just putting one example. So these FI types are defined by the Rabbit, and as we showed in the beginning, all the FI types are listed in the Rabbit website. And here is an example FI type for a deposit. What information does a deposit data include? It includes what is the account, who is the holder, or holders in case of a joint account, profile of the account summary of the account, and transaction or list of transactions. So the data structures for each of these FI types are defined in detail by Rabbit, so that when any FIP sends the data, it has to adhere to this, so that it becomes easy for FIUs to use the same set of data from different FIPs. Okay.
Railu,
So
there are few questions if you want to take it up. Just to your right, from where you can see the participants number, there is a question and answer section where you can just view open questions.
actually, there's some problem with my RAM. That Q&A panel is okay. Let me stop. Yeah, now I can see. Okay. Okay. So there is a first question about, are all three APIs, FIP, AA, FIU working right now, or only the Anshuman, you want to take, somebody is saying going to answer this question live.
yep. Since you are answering it live, that's why it's saying that.
Oh, okay, sorry. Sure. Okay. So yes, FIPs, AA, FIUs, there are entities where these APIs are live. When you are participating in the hackathon, there are some AIs, FIUs, FIPs who are providing these APIs for you. In addition to actual FIPs and AIs and FIUs, there are simulators also available in the Sahamati sandbox environment to which you can connect and access these APIs. Okay.
So, Railu, to rephrase you, you are saying we have simulators also.
Yes.
The hackers can build their own FIU module also,
Yeah.
and there are FIU, FIP modules and account aggregator modules which are already available. which
Yes.
the hackers can use in the sandbox.
Yes. Yeah.
Great.
Okay. There's a question from Abhilash. Yes, Abhilash, the sandbox details will be shared. They're already, I think the Google form is provided with you, but we'll also show you the website, developer website, where all the details are available. Um, okay, Abhilash, there's a question about 1 and 6 are the asynchronous responses. I don't know it refers to which slide. But yeah, some APIs are uh, uh, asynchronous and
Slide
some.
number 11.
Okay, it's a slide number 11. Hmm. Yeah. So if yes, FI notification, FI request. So as an FIU, when you send an FI request, you will get a acknowledgement synchronously, and an FI notification is an asynchronous callback API. Yes. Okay, in the previous slide, FIU was on user was on FIU app. So there are multiple scenarios. Yes. In most of the cases, yes, user journey starts from an FIU app. They go to an FIU app, they start their whatever application, loan application or any other application or any processing there. And as part of that, they might be redirected to an AA app, or an AA page might be embedded in the FIU app itself. Okay. Yeah. Ishan, there's a question from Ishan. Can I simulate AA and FIP at a time in the sandbox? Yes, you can have. There are actually AA simulator and FIP simulator which you can use it. We'll also explain you how you can use them. Okay. Yeah, I think rest of the questions I am saying, some of the questions I think I request Abhishek Anand if you can answer those things, because
Yes,
they're asking for links. Okay. Yeah.
sure. Mahesh, can you just put in the links of simulator
Yeah.
links and
Mhm.
those pages?
Okay. Yeah. So I think yeah, we'll take some of these questions towards the end because they are more about hackathon. How do I participate? Once we discuss Sahamati Net services also, we'll get back to them. Okay. Sure, let's move on. So as you have seen, right, there are multiple APIs provided by, has to be implemented by AAs, FIPs, and FIUs for this whole AA ecosystem to work. And if you see, for example, if you are an FIU, you need to integrate with AA to access some of the APIs. And there are multiple AAs in the ecosystem. So each AA will be hosting their APIs at a different, at their own endpoints, right? So you need to know, okay, where each AA endpoint is running so that you can make an API call, right? So one way is you have to reach out to each AA to find their endpoint so that you can make a request. Second is when you're making a request to that AA, the AA needs to know that you are in fact an authorized FIU to do that. So that means there needs to be a authentication mechanism set up between the FIU and the AA to use that, right? So imagine if this has to happen between every FIU, every AA and FIP combination, right? Every FIU needs to reach to every AA needs to reach out to every FIP to just even find the endpoint URL. Forget about the setting up the authentication mechanism and all those things. So to help in these things is where Sahamati Net is coming into play. So Sahamati Net provides a set of services, common tools, which helps these kind of integration, which simplifies these integration steps between different entities. Uh, there are some services which are already there, some services which are being built as we speak, and there will be more as we build in, as we go on. Yeah, so I mean, Sahamati Net at a briefly, it is a technology infrastructure. Today, I think we are around 9 to 10 million consents per month. If we have to go to 100 million monthly consents, there needs to be a lot of simplification in the integration and all these things. So that's where Sahamati Net comes into picture. So if you look at it, Sahamati Net, there are multiple things in it. On the right hand side, you'll see a bunch of shared services. For example, central registry is basically a directory of all FIUs, FIPs, AAs which are participating in the ecosystem. So you don't you if you connect to the central registry, you will know the endpoints of each of these entities so that you can discover them via this registry and then start connecting to them. IAM is again a service hosted by Sahamati Net to generate access tokens for each of those entities, and then you use that access token while making an API call to the other party. So that the authentication is taken care of it. Then there's observability, which uh, basically collects network usage and performance metrics, allows FIPs, CAS, and FIUs to view on their own metrics and then act on top of them, right? Then there is another service at the end called proxy or router. There's a naming convention thing which is going on. Either one of these names will be fine, but I will explain what it does. I'll not go into all other services which are currently in progress, but Sahamati Net basically provides a unified infrastructure for all the entities to operate seamlessly in the AI ecosystem. So for the scope of this buildathon, these are the key services which you will be using as part of this hackathon. So mainly there are central registry, the IAM service, which is also previously used to be called as token service, then the proxy, bunch of simulators, and finally the observability dashboards. Okay, so let's get into each one. As I said, central registry is a directory of all entities that are operating in the ecosystem. If you look at the sandbox environment, it will have the list of all entities operating in the sandbox environment. So all AAs, FIPs, FIUs, you can call the registry lookup API to find who are the AAs available for you to connect with and send a request to them. It contains the public certificates of these entities so that when you're sending a request, or when you receive a request from an entity, you can validate the signature of the request, right? So this is the first starting point for everybody who wants to participate in the hackathon. Either as any of these entities need to get an entry added into the central registry in the sandbox environment. There's a Google form, I guess, is shared with all the participants, which needs to be filled. Once you submit the Google form, Sahamati team will add an entry for you in the central registry. So for the hackathon, we have a Google form, but beyond hackathon, generally for the sandbox environment, there's an email address to which people can send a request to. But for the hackathon participants, please use the Google form to submit your request to get an entry in the central registry. Okay. So that's with the central registry. Then, as I said, once you get an entry in the directory, then you need to have an entry in the identity and access management system to get an access token so that you can start using the Sahamati Net services as well as AA APIs in general. So IAM actually supports uh, two types, entities and users. I'll explain briefly what each of them in the next slide. So entities are basically AAs, FIPs, FIUs. Using this IAM provided tokens, they can send requests to other entities. Users also can create an IAM record and get an access token to basically access the observability dashboard system and other services also, which I'll touch upon. So very high level flow how this IAM works. Once you submit the Google form data, your form will be reviewed and onboarded in both into the IAM and the central registry. Once it is onboarded into the IAM, you will receive an email with two things, user password reset link and an entity ID and entity secret. So in this Google form data, you will be asked to enter details about the entity which you are representing. If you, for example, if you are representing an FIU, you need to provide name of the entity, some basic information, the endpoint URL of your services and all those things. In addition to that, you also need to enter user details, who will become the admin for that entity. So whatever user details you submit in the Google form becomes the admin user for that entity. So you will receive an email with these details. Once you receive those, you can use the API called Sahamati Net IAM API called entity token generate by passing the entity ID and entity secret as an input to generate the entity token. This is basically the JWT token used for accessing Sahamati Net services as well as account aggregator APIs. So you use the entity token that is generated to access any of these services. And as one of you have already asked, this token, access token which is generated has an expiry of 24 hours only. So this generate token API has to be repeated every 24 hours to regenerate a new token. Okay, so this is the API to do that, and you set it up to run every 24 hours to generate a new token. So this is for the entity tokens. And as I mentioned, you will also receive a user password reset link, which you need to use. Click that link and set the password for the user, admin user for the entity. Once you set the password, you can use the email and password to access the observability dashboard. Basically, in observability dashboard, you can see how many calls have been, how many APIs have you made to whom, and how many are successful. And similarly, how many APIs have been made called to you, and what is the success rate and failure rate and all those things. So with the email and password of the user, you can access the observability dashboard. In addition to that, using that username and password, you can generate a user level token also. Okay, so there's an API called user token generate. You pass the email and password as the input. A user access token gets generated. Today, the user access token can be used for two purposes. One is, you remember this entity secret which is sent in the email, but there's also an API called entity secret read, which you can use to get the same secret data. If you, for example, if you lose that email or you lose the secret data, there's this API which you can use along with the user access token to fetch the secret information. And there is another API called entity secret reset to regenerate the entity secret. This typically is needed for two reasons. One is, if the entity secret which is shared with you is compromised, uh, it is you obviously has to reset it and generate a new entity secret and start using that. Or uh, there might be an client's entity secret expiration also, which a bit has RBI has recommended to set an expiry per client secret also. When that expiry happens, again use the entity secret reset to generate a new entity secret and start using it. So this user token can be used for these two purposes. Uh, yeah, but as you see, this is the first version of the Sahamati Net. Going forward, there will be a lot more other services which will be coming, and the same entity token and user token will be needed to access all those services. But for current version and for the hackathon, these will be the services which you can leverage using the tokens, both the entity and user token provided by the IAM system. Okay. So as I said, yeah, after IAM, the other Sahamati Net service is what we call as proxy. I will move on and explain you what proxy is for quickly. So without proxy also, yes, all the entities can operate, but what it means is every FIU will be making calls to every AA will be making calls to every FIP, which is also which is what currently is happening also. But as you see, as the number of FIUs and AAs and FIPs are increasing, this may actually cause a little challenges in the integrations and interoperability. And in all these cases, of course, every entity has to use the IAM and central registry for the purposes I mentioned, for discovery in the central registry and for access tokens from the IAM. Every entity obviously has to use them. So this is how integrations happen without proxy. But what proxy does is, basically everybody needs to only connect with the proxy service, which then routes the request to the intended recipient. So if a FIU1 wants to send a request to AA1, instead of directly calling the AA1 endpoint URL, they can send the request to Sahamati Net proxy by saying that my recipient ID is AA1. Sahamati Net proxy takes care of routing that request. Why is this needed? From a technical point of view, I don't need to make sure that in production environments, one of the key things in fintech space is uh, there is a lot of IP whitelisting and endpoint whitelisting needed if any two entities have to talk to each other. So every time an FIU or an AA FIP wants to connect to a different entity, there is this whole process of security, network setup, routing setup, and IP whitelisting. So all that will be reduced to a single time with the proxy. Not only that, by the virtue of connecting to the proxy, if any new entity comes into the network uh, and connects with the proxy, uh, uh, and of course they become discoverable, every FIU or AFIP automatically can start sending requests to that new entity. There is no additional effort required to start integrating with each new entity. So that is the how the Sahamati Net proxy works. So everybody only has to make calls to the proxy, and proxy takes care of routing it to the appropriate entity. Okay. Yeah. So proxy, as I mentioned, requires one additional attribute called recipient ID, so that proxy knows to whom the request has to be forwarded to. So that is the one additional header which needs to be sent by the sender if they want to send the request via proxy. If you are not sending via the proxy, and if you are integrating directly with an AA or an FIP and FIU, this additional header is not required. But in that case, you need to do that for each entity. Okay. So moving on, one after the proxy, another service that is available is simulators. There will be a demo of proxy simulator IAM by Mahesh shortly. But yeah, simulator, as you all know, is a service to mimic behaviors and different scenarios. So there are APIs available for you to create mock entities also, as well as set up, configure mock API responses for different scenarios. There are also pre-created mock entities and scenarios in Sahamati Net sandbox environment. There are 3 entities created: AA simulator, FIP simulator, and FIU simulator. And there are multiple scenarios being pre-set up so that you can use the scenarios. I think we are working with multiple AAs, FIUs, and FIPs to create those scenarios and load it into the sandbox environment. You will be seeing updates on those as well. Today we have some set of scenarios, but as we go, there'll be other scenarios that also will be available for you to use. Okay, that's with the simulators. And then finally, the observability part of the uh, Sahamati Net services. Uh, so one of the key things is, as a network, we want to know, not we as in not only Sahamati, but everybody wants to know what is the overall usage, performance and usage of the network. If the network grows, everybody grows. That is one. Second is, there are always these questions of, right, I made a request, the other entity did not respond, or the request failed. So how do we get a single source of truth uh, to single source of truth view into this network data? So Sahamati Net already also has built this observability layer, which basically captures all the network traffic going in and going via the proxy to uh, basically create this network usage metrics. So there are high level network level metrics, which is accessible to Sahamati and everyone, but each entity can also access their own network usage and performance metrics. So all they need to do is go to this API, log in with the email and password which you set up as part of your IAM onboarding flow, and start accessing these dashboards. Today we expose the dashboard. Soon we are going to also open up APIs to fetch the data out, to pull your data out. But I think for the hackathon, you can start using the dashboard and view how many requests you have made, what have failed and what are successful, and those kind of information. So yeah, I'll stop here. So these are the 5 services which you will be using as part of hackathon. 5 Sahamati Net services: the central registry, IAM, proxy, simulators, and observability dashboard. So these are the 5 Sahamati Net services which are available for you to use as part of the hackathon. We'll have a quick demo. Okay, yeah, best before going to the demo, as I said, This is the website developer.sahamati.org.in. If you go to that, there is a section called Buildathon 2024. It has all the details what I have explained in the last few minutes. How do you get onboarded? What are the different Sahamati Net services? All those 5 services, how you can use them, including the API documentation and sample Postman JSON files for you to have a quick start. Okay. So that's the presentation on this thing. So what I'll do is I'll let Mahesh to continue with the demo. Meanwhile, I'll go through the questions, and once the demo is done, we can start answering the questions. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Raju. Uh,
Stop
hello,
it.
hi everyone. Uh, okay, let me share my screen. Are you able to see my screen?
Yeah,
Raju
Mahesh,
or
it is visible. Yeah.
okay, great. Hey, hi everyone. So let me start the journey with you guys only. So I'll show the
Mahesh, your voice is there
to
is an
use
interruption.
all the services.
I think is it for me or Anshuman, or it is Mahesh voice clear to you?
Yeah, Mahesh, you might need to check your audio system again.
Okay. Is it fine now?
Yeah, this is better.
Yep.
Okay, great. So I'll be showing all the documentation and from each service, the APIs, what are the services we have from Sahamati Net. Those APIs will do the demo. Let me start with the onboarding process. So you guys, when you submit this Google form, we'll get the details about your request.
Hello.
Yep, Mahesh will be joining in, I guess. I think he lost the internet connection.
Oh, okay.
Railu, will you be answering some of the questions?
Yes.
Yeah, Mahesh has come back.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Uh, can I know where the connection disconnected?
When you show
Yeah,
the
it was on the onboarding page, Mahesh. You just started onboarding and the screen freezed.
Okay, is my screen visible?
Yeah, visible.
Okay. Uh, so basically, what I was explaining is when you send this form, Google form, will receive the entity details along with the email ID. Using this email ID, we'll onboard you as an user to the Sahamati Net sandbox environment. Also, we'll create the entity, and the user entity linking will happen. When we onboard your user, you'll receive an email, something like this. Welcome to Sahamati Net, activate your user account. So this email will be helpful for you to reset your password. Please ensure that you are resetting your password within three days. If you click on this link, it will verify your email ID and then click on proceed. This will ask you to set your password. So I'm configuring password. Let me copy this password. So actually I gave this as entity ID, and I gave my email ID as primary email. Now I have my email and the password for it. Let me submit this. So now I have my user account ready. With this, we can make use of IAM services to understand how to generate the for a given entity ID, we need to generate the secret. Then only we can make use of the Rabbit APIs, FIU, FIPA, based on whatever the type of entity you guys onboarded, those APIs to communicate with the other type of entities. You have to generate the access token. So let me go to the APIs. Before that, we have the complete documentation about, one second. For you guys to go through and understand the complete details, the documentation is available here. You can go to Sahamati Net services. Here, the details about the services along with the Postman collection, you can make use of it. Download this JSON and import to Postman. I hope all of you know about Postman. Postman is a REST API client using which we can send the request to the REST API services. For each service, we have the Postman collection here. And we discussed about observability. In case of observability, you can open this link, and here you can, when you open this link, you can make use of the same credentials to log in and see the dashboard with your usage. Here you will have the member dashboard, using which you can understand how many requests you sent, what type of requests, everything comes here. In our case, we just onboarded, so there is nothing to see. Let us make some API requests, then we'll be able to see some numbers here. So I'll go back to I'll go to Postman. I imported all the Postman collections, whatever I showed in the documentation. Let me first go to the token service. Here, we have the user API, which asks us to give the username and password. So we have the username that is whatever I showed, Mahesh Kumar plus 21 at sahamati.org.in. And let me configure the password in the environment itself. Now I configured my environment in Postman. If I go to this API and see the configuration and trigger the API request. Okay, 1 second. I think I need to change my environment. Yeah, so I gave my username and password. With this, I got the user access token. You can decode and see this using JWT.io. Basically, this is a JWT token. If you copy paste here, you can understand the details about the token. Here, if you see this token, it is linked with an FIU ID. That's what it has. That means using this token, we can access and do the operations which are related to FIU. So what I'll do is using this token, I'll first get my secret for my entity. So with variables, the authorization token is configured. Uh, I generated my user access token. Now what I will do is I'll update the request body with my entity ID. That is this one. When I add this and send the request, I'll be able to access the secret. Now I have entity ID and entity secret both. So with this, you are completely onboarded. You have your user ID, password for you to access and handle your entity, basically to read or reset your secret. And the other part is you have entity and its secret, using which you can generate the entity secret, which is helpful for you to access proxy simulators and any other entity APIs. As an authorization token, to generate authorization token, we can make use of these two things. So let me take this and try to generate the access token for entity and validate whether it works or not. These two I'm providing. Now I'm able to generate my access token, which is the member access token or the entity access token. So this is about IAM or token service. I'll stop here. You guys have any questions?
Mahesh, there are a few questions which
Okay.
see if you can answer some of them. Just on the right hand side where participants are, you can see the number of participants.
Okay, fine.
So if you want, I can read it for you. Somebody, so Vedant has said that when I was I was trying to read the secret of my entity with the help of my user access token. I'm getting an error of user doesn't have access to make this request. I also sent the email to Sandbox yesterday regarding the issue. Okay.
Okay.
We should. Yeah,
Ideally, this
Mahesh.
should not happen. Maybe it might be because the linking might not happen properly. Vedant, I request you to please validate your JWT and check your entity ID is available. Also, we'll look at your email. We'll validate and quickly handle and respond to your email.
So
Okay.
if you can see the other question, you have to come back to the Zoom.
So,
Sure.
yeah, I think one of the question I think people are asking is, Mahesh, in that form, very, I think I'm clubbing two questions. People are asking what is that entity ID? What should they give? Similarly, in base URL, couldn't understand what's the base URL, certificate, IPs, inbound ports, outbound ports. If you can explain those 5 parameters, what they need to give and how. ID, base URL, certificate, IPs, and ports.
Sure. Okay. Fine. So first, let me start with ID. So ID basically for the entity to uniquely identify, we recommend you to give a human readable, easy to identify a string which is human readable and easy to identify. Example, uh, if you want to build something on top of FIU and your the project or the use case what you are building is related to uh, example XYZ, then you can mention something like XYZ-FIU. As a simple example, I'm telling. that is about ID. And for certificate, as Railu mentioned in our explanation, uh, what you need to do is
Mahesh, we are losing you.
data fetch.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, the data request, FI data request, data fetch, these flows requires encryption, data encryption, right? For that, it is important to have the public key, private key. Generally, what happens is the other party uh, to send the data to us, they use our public key to encrypt the data and send it so that we can use our private key to decrypt and access the data. That's how it works. Generally. What you can do is to generate the JSON structure of the public key or the certificate. Go to MK key.
Well, Mahesh, you are not audible. The voice is breaking.
Is it fine now?
It is better now. Thank you.
Okay. So basically, to generate the certificate, you can make use of this website, mkjwk.org. Here, just specify the key size, key use. You can mention signature and the algorithm to use to generate the signature, and specify key ID, your own unique ID, or just mention one of these options. It takes care of generating the key ID. And this one you can mention yes and click on generate, which will generate the public key for you. You can make use of all these things. Just copy public key and use this in the form, and just take care of the private key. Keep it with you safely. Copy this and keep it with you. This is about certificate part. Coming to the base URL. So base URL is you are selecting yourself or nominating yourself as one of these entities, right? FIU or FIP or AA. So you should ensure that when you select one of these, have the implementation of the Rabbit API specification with you guys. So the service which is having the implementation of Rabbit APIs, for that, what is the URL? That's what we are expecting. If you have one, please provide. Otherwise, leave it blank, or in the form itself, I mentioned or we mentioned the URL to use, the simulator URL. Please use that URL. Did I cover all properties?
Ports, inbound and outbound ports.
Abhishek?
Mahesh,
Okay. So
inbound and outbound ports and IPs also. Yeah.
Sure, Ryle. Yeah. Actually, the inbound, outbound ports and IP address, these in the Google form, we mentioned it as optional. If you have, you can provide. Otherwise, it's not required. In general, as we discussed in our previous conversation, in finance domain, the communication to ensure securely do the communication, the applications and the environments will be whitelisted with the specific IPs. So that's the reason we requested you guys to specify, but it is an option. For hackathon, we are not doing any restriction, so it's not a required field. But I explained it for you to understand the context. Okay. Let me go back to the demo. So we completed the token service part with this, the onboarding process and how to generate the user access token and get the place. generation of member or entity secret, entity secret plus the member's auth token, the JWT token, which is helpful for us to use it in the API request between the entities or through proxy. How to use, we'll see now. So I'll start with the proxy first. So what we'll do is we have the FIU, and the explain in our previous part we discussed about the journey of discovery, account discovery, consent workflow, and FI data request or fetch. So let me take one example, which is the consent request. The consent request, it goes from FIU to AA. FIU sends the consent request to AA to generate a consent artifact and get it approved by the user. To initiate the consent request, first the FIU should trigger the consent request. So the consent request, as per the Rebit, we have find the start date, expiry, mode, all these parameters which Riley explained in our previous discussion, we have to mention based on the use case. Depends on the specific use case, personal loan or home loan. Depends on use case, the structure will be defined. By specifying the consent details, the request will be sent from FIU to AA. And as per the proxy structure, the X request meta header is a base64 string. So this is the base64 string of, let me show the value of the base64 string. Here, I'm using A set as the recipient ID. So
Mahesh,
basically this JSON, where, yeah,
आपका ना your network is a bit patchy. So sometimes it is audible, sometimes it is not. So is it possible for you to check the network?
sure, Abhishek. Is it fine now?
Much better.
Do you have any background noise?
No.
Okay, great. Okay, so to send one Rabbit API request between FIU to AA through proxy, what we need to do is the first thing is we need to generate the authorization token. For that, so let me take my FIU ID. And the secret. And send the request, which will give you the authorization token. Copy this. This we need to put it in the consent request authorization header. This is first thing. Second, as per the Rabbit API specification, we should compose the request body. That is second part. And third important thing is we should compose the X request meta header, which is a base64 string as per the proxy design. This is the base64 string of the response recipient ID, whatever I mentioned here, we are using AA simulator as recipient. That's the base64 string I'm using here. Using this, if you send the request goes through proxy, and it reaches to the AA. AA will respond with this JSON object. Here, if you see, I'm using AA simulator. Basically, we defined for all the participants to make use and do the integration easy. We created three simulators: AA simulator, FIU simulator, FIP simulator. These three simulator IDs you guys can use to do the easy integration. Along with these IDs, for you to handle different scenarios, we listed the scenario specific header. Example, if you want to generate a bad request, you can send this X simulate res as header. This is the header, and mention example bad request. If you send this, it will return the bad request response. This way, you can integrate with different scenarios and handle your application. This is how you can make use of proxy and simulator. With simulator, as I mentioned, we have these three entities, and these are the basic response structures for which you can simulate the response. But based on your use case, you might need different structure of the response object, and you need to onboard and use the different structure of the response. For that, what we have done is we enabled APIs for you to load your own data, the response data, and fetch the same data as part of your implementation. For that, please use the API specification mentioned here to add the data or list the data. Here, the key thing is you need to specify the scenario ID, something like this. So the scenario ID you need to specify when you are adding, and when you are fetching, what you need to do is you need to specify that scenario ID as a header in your API call, something like this. When you specify the scenario ID as header, it considers that scenario ID and fetch the data. I'll stop here. If there are any questions, we'll take. Hello? Abhishek?
Yeah. I think it's an example application which uses Sahamati Net. That's an open
Yeah,
question only.
yeah, I wanted to answer it live, hence I left it. So there's no application as in user-facing applications built on top of Sahamati Net. There are only simulators, API simulators available as of today. There's no applications available, and I think this hackathon is going to provide us those applications. I hope that is the question, and I answered it accurately. Yeah, there are no user-facing applications that are currently available using the Sahamati Net. Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
So I covered the token service, simulator, proxy. The other main key important thing for us to use is central registry. As an entity, it's important to know who are all the other entities available to integrate and test it. Example, in proxy, we have to use the recipient ID. What are the other recipients available? To know that there is the central registry available, Here there are APIs which using which you can fetch all the entities by type or by ID. So if you want to know, example, all the FIPs part of the environment, you can use this API to fetch all the FIPs. Similarly, if you want to know AAs, the based on the type value here, you'll be able to get the data. For this also, the Postman collection is available in this link. So here the Postman collection is available.
So Mahesh, you were saying that since we are in discussion and these are companies like they are currently working in terms of integrating with Sahamati Net. Like Safe will go live today mostly as A, and there are other companies who will go live as FIP and FIU, right? So that
Yeah,
means
yeah.
all these companies can be discovered via this,
Yes,
uh,
yes,
and they
yes.
can call the data, they can engage with
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
And if some of the uh, if one of the FIP is going live on a Sahamati Net here, but if they are not using a proxy as service, then they've just used token service and your CR, then
Yeah.
will it be still visible?
Yes, yes. Proxy is an optional thing for
Hmm.
us. Example, if you onboarded as FIU and you want to use one of the AA, example, let's take Setu as an AA you want to
Hmm.
use, then you can make use of this central registry API to understand the details about Setu AA, what is the base URL to send the request directly to Setu to
Hmm.
to do the account linking or discovery or FI data request and fetch. For all of them, this is the base URL. And in case of encryption, if you want to encrypt and send the data, then the certificate is here to use and encrypt the data and send it to them so that they can use their private key to decrypt. Uh, so and other details, the basic metadata of the entity are available here.
Okay, got it.
Um, that's it from my side. I'll stop sharing.
Okay.
Yeah, Mahesh,
So
there are a couple of questions. First one is, can you share the open API spec for proxy service APIs that we can import in Postman? Apparently, they are not found on the Sahamati docs. Proxy service
Okay.
APIs.
I'll the the API specs are available. I'll share the link. About Postman collection, the Postman collection is not linked. We'll link it tonight and let you know. The API specification is available at this place. I'm sending the link of it.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's another question also about the same. Proxy API specs are not available. Okay. There's a question from Prajna. Is there any API playground available where I can make limited mock request before I use my real queries? Are there any monthly quota rate limiting available? No, there's no rate limiting available. You can make any number of calls. Sandbox itself is the playground where once you get your access token, you can directly use that token to make calls to any of the simulators. Rajna. There's no limit, so you can directly use your creds, your own credentials. And the next question, I think Mahesh already answered about the proxy API specs. Abhishek, on the last one, video recordings, you can share the link where they will be available, recordings of
yeah, it
this.
will be. We can share it in the group.
Yeah.
And Anshuman, can you share it here? And also, somebody asked about Pramod's
Yep.
link. Please do share it.
Yes, we do.
Okay. So what I can do is, if we have answered the queries, I'll just quickly show you all, like Railu and Mahesh has been kind enough to give you a brief background how APIs interact. And considering myself as a business guy, I'd like you to share a demo of how this is implemented in the real life. So, is my screen visible? Somebody can confirm.
It is.
Great. So I'll just share an example of a FIU. Here, the FIU is the lender called the company Homeville, and Homeville is a housing finance company. So it's an app. So I'll just play the app, and where initially the onboarding of customer starts, where the customer is asked to share their profile data. So normal, I'll just quickly. So while Homeville asks the customer to log in via mobile number and PAN, and once the customer has given all those details, they would create an application in their system. Now they ask that which product they want to go for, the customer want to go for. Customer is Sulekha. She will select home loan in this case. Once the home loan is selected, she would be asked to uh, for giving the financial document so that the lender here, home village, can check what's the eligibility. So once she clicks on the check eligibility page, she would be redirected to a FinView, which is an account aggregator, wherein all the pre-fed data is passed to the account aggregator for it to create the A handle. SMS OTP will be triggered to the customer mobile number when this customer enters the OTP. The account aggregator handles get created. So generally, this screen about asking from a customer like which bank do they bank with can be a part of a FIU page. So here they are asking which bank they are banking with. The customer selects the respective bank. A discovery call is made to that bank, and the bank reverts back with two accounts. Mostly these two accounts would be linked with this number in their CBS systems. So customer is asked to select one of the account which they want to share it for getting the eligibility check. Customer selects the one account, and this is a consent screen. It has to be more descriptive, like in terms of for what purpose, for what period, what is the data life, and what is the frequency. The customer is is told about the whole consent uh, parameters. Once the customer reviews and authorizes, OTP is sent by the FIP. So here the customer initially selected Axis Bank. So Axis Bank actually sends an OTP which a customer to verify the customer if it's the same customer which is sending the request. Once the OTP is sent, the linking is being done. If you see, once the customer is shown their ID and a handle ID, it's similar to what UPI is. And the data now will get passed from the FIP, which was Axis Bank, to the FIU home village. And once this is analyzed, and they will revert back with the eligibility. The customer is shown an eligibility of 20 lakhs. And now, uh, as I told you that there are around 16 different data types which are available on account aggregator. The beauty of this demo, which I like the most, is they have nudged the customer here. They ask the customer that if you want to get a higher loan amount, please share your other data points. Now that once the customer selects get higher loan amount, the customer will be asked to share the other asset details. And now again, the login to the account aggregator, which is FinView here, happens, and the customer selects what all asset types he wants to link. In this case, he selected the bank, one more bank account, his insurance policy, and security data. And as a process, this is a one-time activity where the FIP, or where the customer data resides, verifies the customer by sending an OTP. Once these are verified and linked to your data handle, the second time when you come onto the account aggregate handle, you don't need to actually do a OTP verification. These accounts are already linked. You just need to authorize and give consent. Uh, So a consent screen comes, and then these, because this is the first time you're linking all these accounts, the respective FIP will send OTP, and OTP verification is done, and all the accounts are linked. And this data is now being shared to the lender on a real-time encrypted manner. Account aggregators are data blind entity. And see, since initially he just linked one account and shared that account details with the lender, the eligibility was 20 lakhs. Because now he has shared his insurance, investments, and one more bank account, the loan amount goes up to 25 lakhs. So this is the real implementation of how companies are using account aggregator. And I can tell you, I've been a lender myself. It has a huge impact right now. We have done some customer interviews on ground, and we have seen huge success stories in terms of effectiveness of such platform. It has made documentation collection so seamless and frictionless. Yeah. So any product business related questions, do let me know. We will have to make separate call for each FIP entity, or be it combined one. So Railu, this is a separate call, right?
Separate call. Yeah.
Yes. User are asked OTP. Sorry. Also following on above one, user will be asked OTP once or multiple times for FIP. So while see, just understand account aggregator as you would have created your UPI ID initially for the first time when you linked your account. You would have given it would have been a two-step verification process. Firstly, you would have given your card details, maybe some code, and also your PIN. So here in this case, uh, only one time OTP is required when you link your asset to that particular data handle. Once you have linked, it remains for perpetual till the time you revoke these consents or you delete the account. Otherwise, these accounts get linked to that data handle. And when you go for another product, you can just share the your data handle and account aggregator handle. Once you share the data handle, it will just ask for the consent that these are the account thing, and the lender has asked for 6 months data, etc. And when you have to just give the consent. So OTP is just one time activity which is done for verification of the customer and linking the account to that particular handle. For example, if I select HDFC and Axis and some insurance as my FIP, I will be nudged OTP once. So one OTP will be sent by HDFC, one OTP will be sent by Axis, and the other one from insurance for the first time when you are linking these assets to that particular data handle. So it is one per FIP. For example, if there are uh, two accounts from Axis Bank, so in that case, Axis Bank can only just send one OTP, and it will be verification would be done for both the accounts. Can you share more details on theme risk management solution? So on risk management solution, uh, we don't want to restrict by stating what are the problem statement, but broadly we are looking at if you can something you can develop on supervisory tech, on reg tech, because the fair use of AI has become a very big challenge, and we want innovation to drive so that the fair use can be monitored at a larger scale. That is one thing. We also see a big requirement coming from the side of building EWS, early warning signals, or portfolio monitoring tools. These are the regular activities which any lenders does for its own whole portfolio. You should have you are open to build solution in that space too. And anything on risk, fraud checks, etc. You can build for sure. We are happy. We have created a ideation group. Abhimanyu, if you can just share the link here. So we'll ask you to also brainstorm in those groups if you want to understand more. Have you question on Sahamati platform? Is it a platform or SSI? Self-sovereign identity. Can you take this, Railu? I have a
Yes.
question on Sahamati platform.
Abhilash, yeah, not yet.
I think these are the new innovations we need to build. There's no SSI model yet implemented not only in Sahamati but in the AI ecosystem also. But that is definitely, I think, one of the things the ecosystem can innovate and build SSI. Not only on the identity, but I think there was one of the question area: how do we ensure there is no misuse of the data once the FIU gets the data, right? There also, I think there can be innovations on how do we build confidential computing platforms where the FIU actually doesn't need to decrypt the data, but they can run their model, whatever their logic on the data without decrypting it. So SSI, the confidence computing, these are all, I think, things which should come into this ecosystem soon.
And which we are looking you all to build in
Yeah.
and give a glance. I think Railu has given you some more thoughts on what else can be built. Okay, so I'm sure it would be we will be interacting with you quite often now. We are very active on the group. Feel free to reach out, call us anytime. We'll get back to you once we get free, and if we are there, we can surely pick your calls up. Uh, Thank you. Thanks for joining in. Let's hope we we see a lot of innovation coming in. Okay. Harish, if you are there on the group, you have one more ideation group. If you can put it there, we can surely brainstorm there. Thank you. Thank you all. Thanks, team there for you. Bye.